Hey everybody, it's Patrick. It's Tuesday, and on Tuesdays I talk about long hair. It seems like every time I post a video, I get at least 1 or 2 comments from somebody. Sometimes they're new, sometimes it's somebody who's been watching my videos for a while. But these people are usually very concerned about hair loss. They are just starting to grow their hair, or they've been growing their hair for a while, and all of a sudden, it looks to them as if their hair is falling out at a much faster rate than they think is normal, either for themselves or for the public at large. Now, I hope you'll indulge me for a couple of minutes because I'm going to tell you 2 quick stories, and they do relate to hair loss in kind of a very, very roundabout way, but I think that they're helpful in an illustrative way of showing what's happening when people suddenly, after starting to grow their hair out, start to worry about their hair loss and start to see evidence of hair loss that's probably not there or was already there before. And then the second story is going to be about hair loss treatments, sort of. By not talking about hair loss treatments, I'm going to talk about why most of the time what you hear about hair loss treatments probably isn't very useful information. So the first story is a study that I read. It was something that the researchers called the pitted windshield effect. What this was some psychologists had noticed that after a newspaper article ran about the windshields in a certain town all showing lots of pitting, meaning little teeny tiny cracks or little teeny tiny dents in windshields on cars, suddenly the entire town, everybody who had read this newspaper article, if I can speak, noticed that their windshields were being pitted. And the townspeople all wondered, why was there suddenly this big rash of pitted windshields happening? Why were their windshields being damaged after this was being reported? Was it acid rain? Was it that their roads were terrible? Was it something wrong with the windshields themselves? What was going on? Well, what it turns out to be is that those windshields were always damaged. There was no more damage to this town's windshields than anybody else's. It was exactly average. Everybody who drives is at risk of having small dings and cracks and chips out of their windshields because driving, you always have stuff hitting your windshields, whether it's snow and ice, or it could be salt from the roads or sand from whatever, rocks on the road, little bugs hitting your windshield. Your windshield is going to get slightly damaged, but you don't look at it that closely because unless there's a great big crack or unless something really large hits your windshield, you're not really inspecting it that much. So the act of inspecting the windshield, because you're paying attention to it, will alert you to those little tiny flaws in those windshields. Now, I will get to why I told you that story in just a moment, but let me tell you the second story. Well over 2,000 years ago, one of the home remedies for headaches and fever was to chew on either the bark or the leaves of the willow tree, or you could make a tea out of that. It was very effective, and it was one of those home remedies that, you would see in ancient manuscripts. It's gone back, way back in recorded history, that the willow tree bark and willow tree leaves could reduce a fever and get rid of headaches and other types of pain. Eventually, when chemists were able to isolate the chemicals in the willow tree, turns out that one of those chemicals is actually responsible for pain relief and fever reduction. Nowadays, we use that chemical very cheaply. We don't synthesize it from willow. We synthesize it in a chemical process now, but that's called aspirin. So something that occurred naturally turned out to be actually effective. It's been known forever, and it's super cheap. You can get, a giant bottle of aspirin for almost no money over the counter, and everybody knows it works. Everybody knows it's safe. It's been tested forever. Now, why did I tell you these 2 things? Well, first, the pitted windshield effect is something that I think that I'm seeing on hair loss. Guys who are growing out their hair, or anybody that's growing out their hair, but guys are especially sensitive to hair loss. We're more used to having our hair be something that we could lose eventually because testosterone tends to result in more hair loss for men than women. Genetically, we get more hair loss than women. But it's not something that you notice if your hair is especially short. The hairs are shorter so that you don't see so many in your hands when you've washed your hair or you dried your hair. You're also not paying as much attention to your hair when you aren't growing it out. You grow it out to, a little, maybe a couple of inches at most, and then you go to the barber and you get it cut. And unless you have a really large patch of baldness or a lot of thinning going on that's really obvious, it's not something you pay too much attention to. However, if you're paying really close attention to your hair, which you haven't been before, and your hair is more noticeable in that it's longer, you're going to start noticing all of this hair that's missing. An average person loses about 50 to 100 hairs a day, and most of that is while you're showering or drying your hair, or you've got your hair in something that will pull at it or break it. So you are seeing much more hair loss than you're used to because you're not used to tracking your hair loss at all. The reason that I say this is because so many people who are just starting out their hair journey get really freaked out by the amount of hair that they see in the drain, in their hands, in the towels, in their hairbrushes. This is something that they haven't seen before, and they get really worried that all of a sudden, just because they're growing out their hair, this is somehow sparking hair loss, and that you're going to be losing your hair, and it has to do with, I don't know, the weight of your hair, or the fact that you're growing it out, or you haven't shampooed it enough, or you're using the wrong products, all sorts of things. There are tons of theories, but for the most part, I think guys are not losing their hair at all more than they normally would. You lose your hair because of genetic factors, because of your age, because of, there are some other things like, there could be chemotherapy or other drugs that could have your hair falling out. But for the most part, your hair is going to fall out or stay on your head anyway. So noticing it doesn't mean that it's happening more often. So I want to say, if you are terribly worried about hair loss, step back for a minute and think the average is about 50 to 100 hairs a day. That's a nice big handful of hair. If you're losing that much hair per day, you're just average. And if you don't see giant bald spots or a tremendous amount of thinning on top of your hair, that's probably because you're losing hair at the same rate that you always did. And you can just take a deep breath and be a little bit more calm and stop monitoring it so much. Eventually, I think most guys get out of this really hyper noticeable phase. After you've grown your hair for a couple of months or a year, you realize that you're just going to have a lot of hair in the shower. People who've always had long hair know this, so they don't worry about it so much. The reason that I brought up the aspirin story is because I hear so many guys who put in the comments that they have all of these natural remedies that they've heard about for losing hair, and they think that this is going to either reverse the hair loss process, slow it down, stop it. It's this secret that's been known for centuries, millennia, but somehow, I don't know, big hair has decided that it needed to be kept off of the market because of this, that, or the other thing. The main reason why I think that isn't true is, one, if there was a hair loss stoppage product that was available, very few men would be bald at this point. Very few people would be bald at this point because people would seek it out. And if it was expensive, people would purchase it for that expense, and you would know, well, I can't afford this hair retaining product or hair retention product because it's too expensive, but you'd know it existed. Or if it was naturally occurring, if, say, onion juice or aloe vera juice or cayenne pepper or all those other things that I've heard, if these naturally occurring things naturally slowed down the hair loss process or regrew hair, then it would be known forever, because men have been very self-conscious about hair loss for a very long time. And something inexpensive that grows naturally is pretty much, other than some, let's say, some drugs that are banned for, just mind-altering drugs and stuff. For the most part, if it's natural and it actually scientifically does something, it goes on the market. Or people just happen to use it. So, willow bark becomes aspirin. Peppermint tea can soothe your stomach. You can test that. It actually works. People, because they're thinking that monitoring hair loss is this sort of arcane field of study that people, you think you're getting some hair back, but maybe you're not. Maybe it's happening. Maybe it's not. It's pretty easy to observe. If people are going bald, they're going bald. You can see on yourself. You might notice, little thinning spots here and there. But if you're going bald, in a couple of years, you're not going to suddenly that won't slow down and stop. And natural products just don't happen to have a very large effect, because if they did, it would be well known at this point. Now, there are products on the market that can slow down the hair loss process and can help you regrow hair. There are things like Rogaine and other topical treatments that can slow that down. And science is always looking for it. And cosmetics industry is always looking for that, because it's a huge deal. It would be a huge product if something was guaranteed to slow down hair loss or to regrow hair. If it happened every time, if it always worked for every guy, or if it even worked 10%, 20% of the time reliably, you would make a fortune selling this. So I don't think there's any real state secrets anywhere for hair growth that some corporation or some government is keeping from us. It's just not that important to anyone. And it's so important to those of us who have, the need to have hair that we like, that it would just simply be on the market. So that's my message for this video, for this week, is one, if you think that you're losing your hair, really observe what's happening on your head. Don't look at the hair in your hands. Don't look at the hair in your hairbrush. That's probably not a good indication, because you're probably not paying as much attention when your hair is shorter. Look at your scalp, look at your hair follicles. If you are losing your hair, you're losing your hair. And most of the time, there isn't anything you can do about it. You can try topical treatments, you can go to a dermatologist, you can go to a hair loss center and see if there's something you can do about it. For the most part, if you're losing your hair, you're going to be losing your hair, and that's, no fun. This is not a happy thing for most guys, but it's something to know. But it's also not something that obsessing over or constantly keeping vigilant about is going to do you any good. And don't go searching for natural remedies that are just brought up by, especially the internet. The internet is really great for a lot of things, but it's also really great for putting out bad information that doesn't actually do anything, that gives people a lot of hope. So don't worry so much about your hair loss. It will happen or it won't. It's an observable phenomenon, and if it is happening, I'm sorry, there's not much you can do about it, but lots of guys rock a bald head, and lots of guys are able to deal with it. So it may be something that you'll have to get used to. You may not have the long hair for a very long time. You may have a short window of opportunity to have your hair, but worrying about it probably will cause more harm than good, and it's not going to really help very much. Thanks so much for joining me this time. I am here every Tuesday talking about long hair. There's a few other things going on my channel. I would love it if you'd subscribe. If you hit the little subscribe button just down below, you will be notified whenever I have a new video. Thanks for joining me this time. I will see you again next time.